Bueno, pues buenos días a todas y a todos. Egunon eta hasteko eskerrak eman nahi dizkiok Nagri-Food klusterrari elikadura osasungarria eta jasangarritasunaren inguruko jardunaldi interesgarri honen antolateagatik. Jardunaldi hau, herritarrekiko harremanetako saileko kanpo ekintzako zuzendaritza nagusia den 2022ko Europar Batasuneko politikak eta estrategiak edatzeko enpresei eta irabazi asmorik gabeko erakundei zuzendutako laguntzen deialdia finantzaturiko ekitaldien barruan kokatzen da. Decía que en primer lugar, desde luego, agradecer al clúster Nagri-Food la organización de esta jornada tan interesante en torno a la alimentación saludable y sostenible. Este encuentro se enmarca dentro de los eventos financiados por la Dirección General de Acción Exterior dentro de la línea Ayudas a empresas y entidades sin ánimo de lucro para la difusión de políticas y estrategias de la Unión Europea 2022. Es este año el segundo que hemos lanzado esta convocatoria y desde el Gobierno de Navarra pues nos mostramos satisfechos con los resultados, puesto que gracias a la misma organizaciones, empresas, asociaciones pueden acercar Europa a Navarra, siendo este uno de los objetivos del Plan de Acción Exterior 2021-2024. Precisamente el eje 1 es Navarra en Europa. Tenemos determinados retos en materias estratégicas ante los que se encuentran nuestras sociedades que no podemos desligarlos del contexto europeo, porque son desafíos que compartimos en toda Europa. Con la participación de instituciones, de sociedad civil, del mundo académico y las empresas, Europa debe avanzar hacia un futuro mejor en línea con los objetivos de la Agenda 2030 de Desarrollo Sostenible. Recientemente lo destacábamos en un evento sobre economía circular en el CNTA, en el que precisamente tuvimos la oportunidad de coincidir, Sandra y yo, y allí decíamos que el agroalimentario es el segundo sector de la economía navarra. La Comunidad Foral lidera el Plan Agroalimentario Complementario que aglutina al Ministerio de Ciencia e Innovación y 7 regiones del Estado con una inversión prevista de 49 millones de euros. Cuenta con 3 centros de investigación, un centro tecnológico, una sociedad pública y un clúster que trabajáis en el desarrollo y creación de nuevas líneas de crecimiento de ese sector. Algunas de las principales empresas líderes de este tienen su sede en Navarra. Y también quiero defender el papel de las políticas públicas en este ámbito, porque en definitiva hablamos de estrategias para abordar cuestiones que afectan a toda la ciudadanía. Hablamos de búsquedas de soluciones a retos contemporáneos desde el punto de vista del desarrollo sostenible. Hablamos del bienestar general de la sociedad, en el que todos y todas tenemos algo que aportar. En este sentido, me gustaría recordar que, dada la importancia del sector de la agroalimentación para Navarra, la Dirección General de Acción Exterior trabaja de manera colaborativa con Nagri-Food en la ayuda para la europeización del clúster y de sus empresas asociadas. En esta línea hemos dado nuestro apoyo para la incorporación de Nagri-Food a 2 redes europeas alineadas con nuestra estrategia de especialización inteligente, S4, relativa a la alimentación saludable y sostenible. Hablamos en concreto de las plataformas de ingredientes para la economía circular y de envasado alimentario. Sabemos también que estáis participando en proyectos en la Euroregión. El proyecto AgroTech Hub, financiado por la Euroregión Nueva Aquitania, Euskadi y Navarra, del que formáis parte, llama a las empresas de ese área y sectores a abordar sus retos de digitalización. Desde luego os animamos a que sigáis participando en estas acciones en este marco transfronterizo y también en el europeo, en el que pronto contaremos ya con las primeras convocatorias de POCTEFA, el programa Interreg España-Francia-Andorra. En este sentido, creemos que el marco financiero plurianual 2021-2027 ofrece muchas oportunidades que desde luego ya conocéis. Y es preciso incidir en esa línea teniendo siempre en cuenta que Europa es mucho más que financiación. Europa es el espacio de la defensa de los derechos humanos, la diversidad y la pluralidad. Europa es la consulta democrática de la Conferencia sobre el Futuro de Europa y Europa es la respuesta conjunta a la situación de crisis energética. Estos esfuerzos creadores son los que nos hacen creer en esa Unión Europea más cohesionada y más fuerte cada día. Pero desde luego no podemos dar por sentado que los valores europeos que nosotros defendemos son compartidos por todos. Ahí tenemos la guerra de Putin, esa guerra que también va contra esos valores y contra la propia Unión Europea. Por eso, desde nuestro departamento seguiremos acompañándoos, impulsando en el esfuerzo diario de la Dirección General de Acción Exterior, a través de la Oficina de Proyectos Europeos, de la Delegación de Navarra en Bruselas o la ventanilla Europe Direct en Navarra, en ese acompañamiento para participar más y mejor en Europa. Porque esta es la apuesta, desde luego, que el Gobierno de Navarra tenemos, una apuesta europeísta y, como digo, en un momento en que además esa crisis bélica, esa crisis energética, esa crisis económica que estamos viviendo, creemos que es más necesario que nunca que Navarra participe en Europa y Europa en Navarra. Europa munduko lurralderik onena izan daiteke bizitzeko, baina gizarteak eta erakundeak batera espazio komun hori eraikitzen ahalegin behar dugu. Digo, para terminar, creemos que Europa es el mejor territorio del mundo para vivir, pero hay que trabajárselo, hay que esforzarse y para ello tenemos que trabajar desde las instituciones, con la sociedad, con las empresas, en el tejido económico, en las entidades público-privadas para construir este espacio común en una labor que, como digo, entidades como el clúster de Agrifood es fundamental. Eskerrik asko, muchas gracias.
Pues muchísimas gracias. Reitero el agradecimiento al Gobierno de Navarra, en concreto a la consejera Ana Ollo, consejera de Relaciones Ciudadanas del Gobierno de Navarra, y a Sergio García, que no puede estar hoy con nosotros, Dirección General de Acción Exterior, por impulsar estas jornadas europeas que, bueno, pues nos ayudan claramente a traer las políticas europeas a nuestra región, a Navarra, ¿no? Desde el clúster agroalimentario de Navarra, lo que perseguimos con estas jornadas no es otra cosa que seguir, lo ha comentado la consejera, posicionando nuestro tejido empresarial, nuestro tejido agroindustrial en el ruedo europeo. Perseguimos además atraer el conocimiento, ¿no?, las buenas prácticas y las oportunidades de negocio que hay en Europa, ¿no?, y que necesitamos ir a todas a un. En concreto, en el tema que nos atañe hoy de las proteínas alternativas, claramente, bueno, pues es un reto que tenemos por delante y que espero que nos ayude a conseguir llegar a un sistema alimentario mucho más sostenible y saludable. Así que, bueno, no me quiero enredar más. Agradecer a los ponentes. Tenemos ponentes de distintos puntos de Europa hoy con nosotros, desde Bruselas, Países Bajos e Irlanda. Y bueno, estamos muy contentos de que, bueno, pues el trabajo realizado, concretamente, yo diría, en estos 3 últimos años, de relacionarnos con otros clústeres mucho más avanzados, agroalimentarios europeos, como puede ser el Flandes de Holanda o el clúster de Dinamarca, bueno, pues están dando ya sus frutos y poder avanzar en esos retos conjuntamente que nos hacen. Así que muchísimas gracias a todos y bueno, pues comenzamos.
Well, good morning. I'm Cecilia Wojciechek. I'm the director of project of Agrifood. After the institutional opening, we will continue with the technical presentation of the conference. Because of the speaker, I will continue in English. Remember that you have in all the moment the translation, both in Spanish or if anyone needs in English, okay? So we will start with the dissemination of European policies. For this, we are going to listen Cindy Schumacher. Cindy, you are there?
Yes, I am here.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Perfect. Okay. Cindy is a policy officer at the European Commission, DG RTD, Unit B2, Bioeconomy and Food Systems. Cindy is working on Food 2030 and more specifically on agriculture-related aspects, dietary shift and alternative proteins, as well as the climate aspect of food systems. She has an engineering degree in agronomy from AgroCampus West in Rennes and a master in degree in environmental economics and policy from Agro-Paris Tech in Paris. Cindy, you know, you are a very busy person, so we especially appreciate your time with us. Well, all the audience is for you.
Very good. Well,
Well, you will share your presentation, or I'll share?
you can share. Yeah, well, I see that you're sharing it. It's perfectly fine for me.
Okay, perfect. You will tell me when I need to pass the slide.
Okay, okay, no problem at all. Thank you very much. So you already introduced me, so that's one thing I do not have to do. That's very good. And thank you very, very much for the invitation to this event. Indeed, alternative proteins and dietary shift is the file that I am responsible for, among others, in my unit. So it's a pleasure for me to be here and also to present the Commission's research and innovation point of view on this subject. So protein transition or alternative proteins, generally speaking. So you can go to the next slide, please. So first of all, what I'm going to do is that I will present a little bit of like the policy, the EU policy context and Food 2030. Then I will present a selection. It's not a full list of projects on this topic, but it's a selection of existing projects on alternative proteins. And then I will talk a little bit more about what is always keeping us busy, Horizon Europe. You can go to the next slide, please. So about the EU policy context, there are actually several aspects to be mentioned. The first one is obviously the European Green Deal. So the Farm to Fork strategy is one of the key elements of the Green Deal, and the overarching goal of the strategy is to create a sustainable food systems. So really sustainable food systems that should be sustainable on all three dimensions: economic, environmental, and social. So I will not go into too much detail. You have a lot more information on this slide about what is meant by economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social sustainability. You can go to the next slide, please. So the Farm to Fork strategy mentions 4 general goals. Well, you have them also on this slide, but basically, first one is about to reduce the environmental and climate footprint of the EU food systems. Another one, or 2 other ones, let's say, is about leading the global transition toward competitive sustainability from farm to fork and to tap into new opportunities. And maybe also another one about strengthening resilience of the food system, which is very, very important, especially considering what's going on in the world right now. And the last one that is not in the slide, and it is actually quite related to the previous one, is about food security, to ensure food security in the face of climate change and biodiversity loss. So the Farm to Fork strategy has 4 quantitative targets for 2030. There is one on chemical pesticides, another one on nutrient losses and fertilizers, another one on antimicrobials, and the last one on organic farming. You also have more details on this slide. So it should be noted that these targets are not legally binding, but they will play an important role when we evaluate EU policies and their implementation. I will give you an example, the CAP. These targets have quite an important role for the CAP because the member states have to consider the objectives and targets of the Farm to Fork strategy in their national strategic plan of the Common Agriculture Policy that they are actually currently working on. So that's about the quantitative targets, but it's not the only ones that you can find in the strategy. There are also qualitative targets, for example, the promotion of healthy and sustainable food consumption, or the promotion of sustainable packaging solutions. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so how will we achieve these objectives and targets? You have a list of enablers in this slide, and one of them that you can see in red is about research and innovation. The strategy does recognize that research and innovation has a key role to play in driving the transition toward more sustainable and healthier food systems. You can go to the next slide, please. So what about alternative proteins and, generally speaking, dietary shift in the Farm to Fork strategy? Well, this is mentioned, first of all. Alternative proteins such as plant-based, microbial, marine proteins. This is one of the key areas of research for sustainable food systems and global food security. And the aim is to stimulate food consumption that is sustainable in health and environmental aspects, highlighting the importance of plant-based diets. And the Farm to Fork strategy also states that the transition to sustainable food systems will not happen without a shift in people's diets. So alternative proteins really have quite a great potential to contribute also to this objective. You can go to the next slide, please. I'm going to talk about something else rather new, I would say, but very important to understand the EU context on food systems, generally speaking. It's the communication on safeguarding food security and reinforcing the resilience of food systems. So it's a communication that has been published in March 2022 as an answer to, let's say, the call or the request of the member states in the Versailles Declaration in the context of the war in Ukraine. So it's important to highlight that in the EU today, there is no food supply issue, but the invasion of Ukraine and also the global commodity price boom are driving up prices in agriculture and seafood product markets. And so it shows the vulnerability of our food system that we actually already kind of observed during the COVID pandemic. But in the case of this let's say conflict, we see, for example, the dependence on imports, for example, of energy, fertilizers, or animal feed. So this increases the costs for producers, and it affects the price of food, which in turn raises concerns regarding the purchasing power of consumers and the income of producers. So basically, this invasion of Ukraine shows some risks and consequences for global food security and negatively impacts especially vulnerable countries and population groups. And we can see the impacts that currently, I would say, for example, on increased costs within the whole food supply chain, the stabilization of agricultural markets through the increases of energy and fertilizer costs, and also the disruption of trade flow from and to Ukraine and Russia. This is unfortunately because of this conflict that's actually even the civil society people show that actually Ukraine and Russia are big players in the food system, in the EU food system as well. And so this is an issue that we do need to tackle nowadays. Last but not least, the communication presents several measures for global support for EU farmers, and also for support for EU consumers. And there is one last point that I wanted to add. In this communication, there will be quite a lot of challenges that Europe needs and that the world needs to tackle. But it's important to note that the communication, the Commission has developed research and innovation activities on actually quite a lot of them through the funding programs. And 2 weeks ago, during the RNI Days, Research Innovation Days, so on the 28th and 29th of September, a new fact sheet has been published. You have the link in this slide. And basically, this fact sheet illustrates concrete examples of how research and innovation can help to basically develop and test solutions to go beyond the barriers that we can face, and also to find new market opportunities. So these are challenges that have been exacerbated because of this war, but they are not new challenges, and research and innovation developed quite a lot of efforts already on them. So you can find more information in these fact sheets. You can go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to mention an initiative that has been developed in my unit. This is called Food 2030. It's a policy framework that has been launched in 2015 in the Milan Expo to take on really a research innovation food system approach. This is very important to tackle issues related to the food system. It's a systemic approach. So the aim is to structure the EU research and innovation systems by basically convening EU services, member states, stakeholders to align research innovation program and also to leverage the funds. The aim is also to connect the whole food value chain, let's say, through research and innovation, so the whole food system, from farm to fork, and I would even add to gut and back, from producers to consumers, land and sea, and so on. And the last point that is actually quite important to keep in mind is that the aim is also to scale up research and innovation. So you'll find a lot of elements about the digital take-up, or open innovation, or open science, education, and skills. So Food 2030 has 4 priorities: nutrition, climate, circularity, and innovation. You can go to the next slide, please. So in 2020, we published a report on the 10 pathways of action. You have the link on this slide. Each pathway, for each pathway, we have a systemic approach to involve all main actors. So you have the producers, the food processing industry, retailers, food services providers, consumers, researchers, policymakers, and so on. The aim is to have what we call the core benefits on all 4 priorities mentioned earlier. And among this pathway, as you can see, we have one on alternative proteins and dietary shifts. So you can go to the next slide, please. And again, the next one. All right, so what are the research innovation needs on alternative proteins and dietary shift? This list, you can find it in the paragraph, let's say, on alternative proteins and dietary shift in this the document that I mentioned earlier. Keep in mind that this list has been made in 2019, so there might be a need in the coming months or years to update it. So the first need is to improve and develop new alternative protein food products. Another need is for an assessment of environmental footprints and the performance of alternative protein food, but also of the positive and negative impact on human health and the bioavailability of alternative proteins compared to conventional sources of protein, such as livestock-based or animal-based proteins, so meat and dairy. Another need is, once we have more information on alternative proteins, we need to make sure that these kind of products are available to people. So this is the role of the food environment. So we need to make better use of the food environment to link food supply and diets in order to diversify the protein offer, in order to then help achieve environmental sustainability and health objectives. And the last point that I wanted also to mention is that dietary shift is basically based on dietary choices, but then we need to identify the drivers and the barriers of dietary choices and provide basically more knowledge and recommendations, I would say, not only to policymakers, but to all actors of the food systems on how we can then move on to a dietary shift. You can go to the next slide, please. So that's what I can say about the, let's say, policy context. But now I'd like to provide an overview of some projects that have been funded already on alternative proteins and dietary shifts. You can go to the next slide, please. So, for example, and I won't be too long on this because I know that the coordinator of the project is here, so you will hear much more from him than from me about that. We have Protein to Food that aim to develop high quality food protein through sustainable production and processing. I'd like to mention maybe 4 other projects: Next-Gen Proteins, Using Chain, ProFuture, and Smart Proteins, that have been funded on the last Horizon 2020 call on alternative proteins. So what's interesting with these projects is that they really focus on several sources of alternative proteins: plant-based, microalgae, single-cell protein, and insect for food and feed. Maybe another project that I wanted to mention is called School Food for Change. So this is one of the projects that have been funded under the Green Deal call Farm to Fork topic, which is also on the Horizon 2020. And basically the aim is to create a shift in both sustainable and healthy diets in schools. So really the project is considering schools, children, young people as basically catalysts for systemic change for the shift to sustainable and healthy diets of all EU citizens. So I wanted to highlight this project simply because it is dealing with diets for a vulnerable group of people, the children. So you can go to the next slide, please. Now I'd like to mention what's basically going on with Horizon Europe. So you can go to the next slide, please. Horizon Europe is the EU funding program for research and innovation with a budget of about 95.5 billion euros. So that's quite a big animal. Horizon Europe tackles a lot of subjects: climate change, sustainable development goals, competitiveness, growth. The objective is really to strengthen the impact of research innovation in basically developing, supporting, but also implementing EU policies while tackling global challenges. So it's made of 3 pillars, and pillar 2 is the one that we are working on. It includes 6 clusters. The one that we are working on is cluster 6, on basically food, agriculture, environment, bioeconomy. But all clusters are linked. And for example, in cluster 1, which is on health, you might also see some interesting elements and interesting calls on food. So you can go to the next slide, please. So cluster 6 is made of what we call intervention areas. You have the list here. So in my unit, we are responsible for the intervention on food systems. And I just wanted to mention it here, just to explain that basically the work that we are doing in Food 2030 and our pathways for actions, this is the basis of our work in Horizon Europe and in the intervention area on food systems. So you can go to the next slide, please. So where are we now? The first work program for 21 and 22 has been published. The submission of proposals for 21 and 22 calls are closed. So the proposals for the 2021 calls have been evaluated and the project have been selected. They started in September this year and will run until, I think it's 2026. And then the projects for the 2022 calls have been selected as well, and they will start soon. So we are now working hard on basically the second work program for 23 and 24. It will be published, should be published by the end of the year, so stay tuned for that. It's important to say also that we are not doing it alone on our own. And we are quite at a very last stage of the second work program, but we really engage in a co-creation process with the colleagues in other DGs, but also outside the European Commission, because after all, the experts, well, you are the experts. So that's always important for us to hear from you. And so even though the second work program will be published soon, there will be more later on. So feel free to let me know what you think are the burning research innovation gaps that should be tackled soon. You can go to the next slide, please. Just some information for you. If you are interested in participating in future calls, feel free to go to the funding and tender portal. All calls are published there, and you will also find in the website quite interesting and useful guidance and manuals that explain pretty much all processes, including proposals preparation and submission. And also, while you are preparing proposals, please keep in mind that if you have questions, for example, you can submit them in the FAQ, but it is also possible that your question has been asked already. So do have a look first. You can go to the next slide, please. This is, I think, the last slide on which I wanted to give you some examples of topics that have been planned in 21 and 22. So on alternative proteins in the 2021 topics, basically the aim was really to fill knowledge gaps on health and environmental aspects. So we wanted to have an up-to-date overview on as many sources of alternative proteins as possible, and of course building on past projects. The project, as I mentioned, has been selected already and started already. It's called Giant Leaps, and so it will run until 2026. So obviously no result yet, but I would really invite you to keep an eye on this project. So once we know more about alternative proteins, we need, as I explained, to make sure that the food are the food products based on them are accessible and available to people. The food environment. So this topic is on basically in 2022, building alternative protein friendly, sustainable and healthy food environment. So as you can see, I made a link with the needs that have been highlighted in the pathway on alternative protein and dietary shift. So the project has been selected and will start soon as well. Another call that is very, very important for the work that you are also doing is then to be able to understand and know more about consumer behavior and food choices. So it's a question of culture and habits. So we need to understand basically the drivers of these choices. And this is the topic on behavior, for which 2 projects will be funded through this call. They are called Feast and Plan Eat, and they also just started and will run until 2026. Finally, I wanted to highlight a topic that has been developed by colleagues in DG Agri on plant-based proteins, where a project, Valpro, just started and will also end in 2026. So you have the links of all topics and projects in this slide. If you want to know more, please feel free to have a look. You can go to the next slide, please. Voila, so that this is that's all I wanted to explain. Thank you again very much for the invitation, and if you have questions, don't hesitate.
Thank you very much, Cindy. There are some questions here. Well, maybe it's not a question, it's a comment. Today we were speaking with Emmanuel, and this region is, I believe, is truly believe in healthy food and also in protein. So we have an R&D system well developing. Our companies are looking for sustainable business model, of course, but maybe we ask by support to convince the consumer, maybe to work more with the consumer engagement, to identify what are the drivers or the barriers in order for all of us as consumers to buy this kind of food. Maybe this is the key to accelerate this transition. You agree, or you want to puntualize something more in this line?
No, I actually fully agree. Consumer behavior, understanding consumer behavior, I think it is something that is key for the work that we are doing on alternative proteins and dietary shift. And I mentioned earlier the call on consumer behavior. What I did not mention is that it was one of the most popular calls that that we had for the work program 2021, because it attracted really a lot of proposals. So it shows first that it is an urgent topic to address, and it is true that it was a while since last time we had a call on really on behaviors, and it shows also the interest of researchers, or even I would say stakeholders, to invest in this subject. So this is something also that we need to keep in mind when we plan the next phase of Horizon Europe. This question of consumer behaviors and empowering as well consumers. This is something that is very important. I agree.
Okay, thank you very much, Cindy, and we keep in touch. Okay.
Sure, thank you very much.
Thank you. Jerome is there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, do you prefer to share yourself the presentation or myself, as you want?
I prefer to share my screen.
Perfect.
I will try and do so now.
At first share, and then I present you in a proper way. Perfect. Our next guest is from Netherlands. He represents a very interesting ecosystem focused totally on proteins. This is the protein cluster of the protein community. The TPC is part of the Food Valley Big Cluster, and the TPC is a first global platform for ingredient supplier, food manufacturing, and other stakeholders looking for plant-based, vegan, or vegetarian solutions. The protein community accelerates the shift from proteins to sustainable plant or other sources protein. I introduce Sharon Willemsen. He's the innovation lead protein shift, and we ask him to introduce first the Food Valley cluster, the protein community, and if there are time, tell us about some trends in proteins. Sharon, you.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for organizing this event. I do see you also as a sister cluster organization, so it's very valuable to hear the insights that I've already heard before now in the past hour, and also to share some insights that may be of inspiration for you. Thank you for that. So first, let me shortly introduce myself, then the Food Valley organization, and then TPC, the protein community, and the trends. So I myself, I am an entrepreneur in the area of protein shift. Back in 2009, I started a company that really introduced new meat-like analogs for based on plants. And you may have heard in Spain of Oira, the merk Heura. I'm not sure if I pronounce it well, but they are also still profiting from the products that we have developed and produced here in the Netherlands. So really meat-like. And what I really encountered as an entrepreneur in this area is that it's really difficult to turn a serious business, that of the protein shift, into serious business. So really starting to earn money and making the impact happen on plates, in fridges, for so many as possible as consumers. Back in 2016, I left the company in order to inspire other entrepreneurs in this fascinating field, turning a serious business into serious business. And that is what I've been doing now for 7 years now here at Food Valley NL together with my colleagues. So also sharing my experience that I've had as an entrepreneur myself. Now, let me first introduce Food Valley. Food Valley exists since 2004. We are an international independent platform to basically accelerate green innovations. You might say also to shorten the time to market of innovative ingredients, technologies, concepts, consumer-ready products. So at our organization, we do not perform research. We basically harvest the innovations that are ready to be scaled up, to be introduced in the market, which sometimes come from universities, but even more often come from very ingenious and creative entrepreneurs, all towards our common goal 2050, in which we hopefully can nourish 10 billion people with healthy, sustainable, and well-priced food. Now within Food Valley NL, we have 3 main topics: protein shift, the healthy choice, the easy choice, and circular agri-food. And I am responsible for every activity around protein shift. We are supported by services on global connections, market intelligence, shared facilities, investment and funding, and entrepreneurship, which also adds to the impact of the innovation fields such as protein shift. We currently have about 280 partners from all around the world. The majority is from the Netherlands, but I think it's about 70-30 Dutch and international parties. Producers, small producers, SMEs, scale-ups, corporates, but also investors and also knowledge providers. And together they form our food transition ecosystem. And we see our members really as a source of inspiration or pioneers. So we try to be the eyes and the ears of the food transition, pick up those pioneers or game changers and really help them to making their innovations work and really scaling them up and implementing them into the market. And in the case of Protein Shift, it is about assuring a future protein production and consumption system all over the world and for all. And within Protein Shift, we have 3 major topics, and you see them here on your screen. So the first is shaping local protein chains, and that is all about becoming more protein self-sufficient. You're all aware of the European ambition to become less dependent on the imports of especially high protein plant sources such as soy. So we are really also focusing on shaping local protein chains, which could be in the Netherlands, but which could also be in other countries or other regions all around the world. The second is about redefining the protein industry. And I can imagine that raises some question. What is that about? Well, it is about really from polarization to partnership, where it comes down to organizations and companies that have a long history in producing, processing, and also distributing proteins, animal proteins, that is. So what we are doing now for a few years is really accompanying these companies like big meat and dairy processors and producers towards the bigger picture and also letting them profit from plant proteins. And by doing so, we are redefining the whole protein industry, so that regions or companies or even countries are not so much considered as, for example, meat companies or dairy companies or regions, but they're in a broader sense considered as protein-rich companies or regions or countries. And I'll give an example later on. The third one is, well, what I said before, is to reduce the time to market of plant protein innovations. I myself, as an entrepreneur, have experienced how difficult that is and what the value is of really sharing infrastructure, expertise, and also network of colleague entrepreneurs. And that really pays off in more than one way. So how do we do that? We organize initiatives, projects in which you can participate, and members of Food Valley NL can also become a partner of the protein community. And together we are the eyes, the ears, and the heart of the protein shift. Again, not focused on research, but really focusing on impact, upscaling innovations, making them available as soon as possible for as many as possible consumers all around the world. And we were founded, or the PPC, the protein community, was founded back in 2017. Actually, later in November, we will celebrate our first 5 years anniversary. And we must be doing something right, because over the years, we've grown to a community that holds over 120, I think the current number is 127 companies are partners. The majority being startups and small and medium-sized businesses. So all very motivated and connected entrepreneurs with, sometimes you may say, crazy ideas, crazy technologies, but very driven also to make it really work. And they don't have a time scope of, let's say, 5 or 10 years to introduce their innovation. They are not seldomly quite impatient. And we also harvest that, and we also cherish that. And sometimes it'll work, sometimes it doesn't, but we've already proven along the way, the past 5 years, that many great innovations really come out of this way of cooperation, and also connecting them with corporates. So to give you one example, you see a lot of logos here, only a few weeks ago, we organized an expedition for Nestlé, more specifically the dairy R&D group from Switzerland, and we connected them with 8 parties of our TPC community. And now already that has moved on to the intended upscaling and introduction of some of the ingredients and technologies that our partners have developed. So it's really about also connecting these younger companies with corporates, especially also to scale up and to have a global impact. You see also, by the way, that we have some partners from Spain. So I already mentioned Jura, and recently also the Fabulous Farm. I'm sure if you're familiar with the company, a very creative and fascinating company, has also joined TPC. So what we share is really practical knowledge. We do that one-on-one in events, in projects, in networking sessions, and we also obviously also on paper. It is all helping them to not only get launching customers, to position themselves or to get financial means, but also to see really, okay, what is our added value in this very dynamic world? To be honest, it is quite overwhelming what is happening right now in the broader area of the protein shift. So many people, so many actors, so many organizations, and that is all a good thing, because what you give energy will grow. However, it becomes more difficult by the day almost to really answer the question, what do I add? What can I add? How can I be distinguishable compared to all these partners? We help them in that process. And in TPC or at TPC, the entrepreneur is the central point. We call them game changers. And here you see just a few of those young game changers which we have helped over the past years, ranging from companies that are dealing with seaweed and bringing seaweed products to the market, to the right above on plant-based cheese. And on the right bottom, you see two brothers holding a bottle which says soy. And let me take 1 minute to elaborate some more on that, because I think it really shows on also how TPC operates. These brothers are Bart and Tom Grobbe, and they are the 4th generation farmers in the Netherlands, and they call themselves the new milkmen. Now, what they did before is they grew soy and other protein-rich crops at their farm, and they fed that to their livestock. And 2 years back, they asked themselves, okay, what if we would feed that not to animals, but to humans? Which is, of course, a very good idea, especially when it concerns crops like soy or faba or lupin that can also easily be consumed by humans. However, they did not understand the art of being a protein shift entrepreneur, and also knowing the chain and all the intermediate parties. They didn't know where to go to with their protein-rich crops to process them, let alone to get financial means also to set up their company. So what we did is we helped them. And one way of doing so is that we said, you should join what we have now called the Bean Deal. In Europe, we all know the European Green Deal. In the Netherlands, we also have a national Green Deal format. And only 2 months ago, we launched the Bean Deal, including 56 partners along the chain, farmers, processors, caterers, retailers, all with one aim, namely to grow processing and consume homegrown proteins, and more specifically, leguminosic crops, or Fabaceae, such as lupin, soy, faba, and chickpeas. And also Bart and Tom are now a member of this Bean Deal organization, and they are already profiting from that. Only recently they have joined a set up a partnership with Friesland Campina, which is the largest Dutch dairy processor, and it's also quite known globally. So this really shows also what we as TPC, or what the TPC membership offers. Another example is this one. My apologies, by the way, because I included these 2 slides later after my sharing, so I'll share them with you later on as well. But I think it's very important, because we're all talking about farmers and their position. What we have done at TPC is we have initiated an organization called the Dutch Protein Farmers, which are now already 50 farmers growing protein-rich crops. What we have done is we have initiated an organization for them, a producer organization, which has now been acknowledged by the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture. And with that acknowledgement, this producer organization, the Dutch Protein Farmers, can now operate far more critical and be heard with a very clear and one-minded sound of now over 50 protein farmers, all sharing their experiences, how they should grow their crops from a practical point of view. So no research, no small fields, but really on a serious agricultural level. So that's also an example of our activities. Now, we have rapidly grown, so we still want to explore, interact, and share our insights. And for that, we have recently launched an interactive platform called Foodleap. Foodleap.com is the website. And with that, all the TPC members have the opportunity to share insights, but also to ask questions and to really interact without me or my colleagues having to intervene directly. So that's also a part of the next level of connection that we're making. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. If you want any further information or see any opportunities to connect, then please do so via myself or my colleague Leo Koning, who is the community manager for the protein community. So indeed, let's stay involved, and I hope you like my presentation, and I'm open to answer some questions if that's still a possibility. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Congratulations by the size of your ecosystem. Maybe we need to work to increase the Spain part of the TPC. I saw here some of the company, maybe that is okay for them to add. And one question for me is really funny in the highlight, also from our internal conference in April, that appeared the concept of fish from vegetable origin. So at this moment, I ask me, what is fish in the general? And I don't know, what, or eggs, is the like as a egg, so like a fish, or taste like a fish? What's mean this concept than fish?
Yeah, well, just as we have experienced the rise of meat analogs and dairy analogs, we are now experiencing the rise of fish analogs. And there are quite some startups in the Netherlands, but also abroad in European and for sure also in Spain, that are really active on that domain and really pioneering, because the market is still very small. And the challenges might be even bigger than is the case with meat or with dairy, because fish, and quite rightfully so, is also associated with health. However, it is not always, the production of fish is not always very sustainable. So also plant alternatives for fish have their share. And what we see now is that the focus is on tuna. So there are quite some tuna alternatives now coming on the market. And as you can imagine, that is not about proteins alone, but it's also about the fatty acid composition. So it often includes also algae that are also introduced in the products. But we also see now the first salmon really also popping up, and even eel, which is an endangered fish species. So it's really aiming for those fishes that are popular, but that are also endangered. And I'm quite sure that this market will rise for the next few years as well. And you also see now quite some investors stepping in. So I think for your cluster and for ours, and also in collaboration, it really would pay off to give some more attention also to that market potential.
Okay, thank you. And we will try to improve the collaboration in the coming month. Thank you very much, Sharon.
Thank you very much, and please enjoy.
No, fine.
So, and now it's an honor to have here our next guest in presence. Even though you can only accompany us less than 20 hours, it's very important to have this direct contact and know you a little more, and also to show you who we are as a region, as an ecosystem, and the power we have in Navarra. Emanuel Zanini, PhD, studied agriculture science at the Università Politecnica delle Marche in Ancona, Italy. During his PhD in applied molecular science, he focused on selected functional lactic acid bacteria as biopreservatives in food products, performing his work at the Safetec in Italy and Daphne's Canada departments. Since 2009, he has been working as a senior researcher at the School of Food and Nutritional Science in the University College Cork in Ireland. He focused on medical nutritional therapy in fundamental and applied research activity on food microbiology, food engineering, and food protein to formulate the next generation of food products. This is, in my opinion, absolutely necessary to address consumer preference and dietary needs and complement the medical therapy requirements. Since 2020, he is coordinating an European project, Smart Protein, focusing on investigating alternative protein sources to accelerate a sustainable food system transition. Thank you very much, Emmanuel, and all for you.
Thank you, Rasilia, for the nice introduction. I hope you can hear me well. Yes, it's quite challenging to come here, but let's make it work. So today I'm gonna share with you some thoughts and some the work have been done so far, and in two different projects in protein to food and in smart protein. As you mentioned, as Cindy was mentioning before, the two projects that basically were focusing on alternative proteins, particularly focusing on plant protein. But before dive into what we did or what we are doing, we need to, I think, contextualize and see where we are. So to better understand the reason why we are doing this. So definitely we are facing several challenges, and you, I think, recognize all of them, COVID-19 for the last 2 years, drought and wildfires in North America, tropical cyclone in India, locust swarm in Africa, and African swine fever. So all these aspects, actually, all these factors, are actually putting our food system in a threat. So we need to act in order to make sure that our system, food system, will be resilient to these unforeseen actions. On top of this, we need to also have a look on the our vital indicators. As you see, CO2 is a concentration is rising, the temperature is climbing at the same time while the wildlife is suffering. But also you see you have, in the meanwhile, the population is growing, and even more, we have people overweight and obese. So it's quite depressing, reading all these aspects, but also it makes you to think which could be the change we need to make in order to make sure that we can reverse what we're seeing. On top of this, last May has been the UN publishing this global report on food crisis. And if you look carefully, you see that the number of people in food crisis, increased dramatically, not for the weather extremes, but for conflict and insecurity. So you see, we moved from 74 million in 2018 to 139 million in 2021. And you see, next to the war or conflicts, you have economic shocks as well. So actually, the number of people in food crisis due to the effect of weather extremes actually reduced from 28 million to 23 million. So definitely there is room for improvement that basically depends on our actions. Just to put things in context, because definitely, we are talking about our food system, how we should move towards a more sustainable diets, but definitely there are also other aspects that basically we should take in consideration for doing a proper life transition. So here in these slides, I summarize, I conceptualize where we are and what we should go. As you see, on the right-hand side, you see our food system, how it's structured now. You see you have different actors divide with a silos thinking approach, and then basically most of the time with conflictive interest. And then you see out of 3 people suffering from malnutrition, and I'm going to talk about nutrition means hungers or food deprivations, and also overweight and obese, at the expense of the natural resources. And you see also our diet has been ultra simplified. We are basically link our diet to 12 different crops, in particular corn, rice, and wheat, and 5 different animal species. So, and then don't forget that basically on top of what we are purchasing on a store, on a grocery, we just go to the bin. So definitely we need to start produce differently and eat differently in order to make sure that we are moving to the left side of the right side of the slides, where we have a safe and sufficient food, healthy, with the reduced gas emissions, but also with a fair income distribution among the actors of the food system. This is also another aspect. And of course, how to feed the 2 extra billion people we are expecting to have in this planet is a question mark. But definitely with the different projects, as Cindy was mentioning before, we try to find, feasible solutions that could actually help. By the way, there is no gold solution on these complex challenges, but there is several solutions that basically could work together. Well, here, just to give you an idea, if we are doing business as usual, we are going to have an increase on animal protein content demands by 70% in 2050. And in particular, if you see on the graphs, can I just the mouse?
Yeah.
If it works. Let's see. Yeah. Yes. If you see here, the increase in calorie demands and then protein, it will be specifically focused on in developing countries. Okay, you see basically in the north and western countries, the increase it will be not that high, but in the developing countries, you're going to see an increase, specific a high in calorie request and proteins. So definitely something needs to be done. It's very hard for them to hear, you cannot eat meat. I'm just now moving from a poor condition to a wealthy conditions, and I want to enjoy meat, because also meat in Pacific countries is also a status symbol. So it's very difficult to try to make them understand that the way we did business as far is not the right one. This is a slides I took from a Nature paper, and listening to them, it seems that, when we are talking about animal food and plant source-based food, we are assessing different risk factors. We saw with the pandemic, with the food trade, the restrictions, then you have environmental pollution, weather extremes, and then you have pathogens and pests that basically are affecting both the plant-based food and animal-based food. And then these colleagues were suggesting, you know what, we should start thinking a new model of food systems. So start thinking on microalgae, microproteins, and insects. There is several plus, in shifting. Resilience advantages, reduce exposed to abiotic and abiotic stress. Of course, this can be produced in a closed environment where you are controlling all the conditions parameters, and then you can actually adjust the production based on the consumer needs. This production can be put close to the urban life, so basically there is no cost on distribution and transport. Definitely, there are several technical challenges here. Consistency, energy supply. All these production systems are very energy intense consuming, so it depends where these energies come from. And also there is institutional barriers, technical expertise, financial investment to do this transition, in particular in these insects and microprotein. There is a lot of investment to be done. And also the regulatory framework is not still there. From my perspective, when I see these slides, I said, okay, it looks like we broke the toy and we take a new one. Forgetting what we were playing so far is a big mistake from my perspective. I think we should get back here. Don't forget that there is a new opportunity that we should take, we should embrace, we should investigate, we should validate. But I think the key is also to getting back to our environment, make sure that basically we can start reversing the way we are producing and processing our food. And with this smart protein, the project has been funded in 2020, we are trying to do this by using an holistic approach. Of course, taking consideration one aspect that basically sometimes has been undermined. These slides actually show you the environmental impact score of over 10,000 products been sourced on Tesco in UK. I don't pretend that you read all, but just pointed out that the environmental impact of dairy alternatives was equal to milk, cow's milk. So what does it mean? Does it mean we're trying to fix a problem, creating another one, or not fixing the problem at all? Because, you know, when we're seeing these figures, I see that basically we are not making an improvement. We are just moving a problem from one side to another. So also when we are targeting a reformulating products, we need to have an holistic approach, not just focusing on texture, flavor, also understanding if from environmental perspective, what we are doing is better than what actually is happening at the moment. So definitely for doing this, as I mentioned before, you need an holistic approach in tackling this challenge. And of course, the idea to work on plant proteins because actually help us to already tackle 6 of the 17 different SDGs from UN, in particular 2, 3, 12, 13, 14, and 15. But I will explain in details how. So the Smart Protein actually is a collaboration project between 33 partners across the globe, because I will show you later that it's not just a European partner, it's a 4 years project, and it got over 9 million budget. We are focusing on chickpea, lentil, quinoa, and faba beans, and also on microprotein, yeast, and fungi, and they're being basically growing by using side streams from bakery, pasta, and brewing industry. So to improve the circularity of these products. So as I said, we have 9 members from, company from 9 EU member states, but also, as Cindy was mentioning, it's not in a Europe issue, it's a global issue. So definitely having partners that basically have a different views, perspective, approach is also helping us to broaden our views. And that's why also we were working with partners in Israel, in Switzerland, in Thailand, New Zealand, and US. Just to have a broad perspective of what we are developing or trying to. And you see also there is a good mixture between SMEs and big player, because that's also a plus to have both on board, because you know the SME company need to support to validate and explore opportunities, and also can become suppliers or clients of big companies, big players. So as I mentioned before, we are targeting, 3 different protein sources: the plant protein, yeast protein, biomass, in particular brewing spent yeast, that basically has been used for feeding our fungal protein biomass production. So along with the pasta and bread crust side streams. Of course, when we are planning to develop the product, we need to make sure that basically we are addressing what the society wants, what the consumers want. It's starting from taste and texture, convenience, of course, health attributes, clean labels, protein content and protein quality, environmental concern, and animal welfare. All these are actually key aspects that has to be taken into consideration when the product formulation will be assessed. And of course, for doing that, we need to make sure that our protein sources, has specific properties, and also not just the proteins, but the products that we are developing. So it has to be natural, simple, few processing steps, taste, clean taste, can be further development based on the food application. Texture, have also processability and functionality in a different range of applications. Appearance, lighting, colors, because that could be shaped later on. Affordability. Also, this is another aspect that has to be taken into consideration. So besides provide the required amino acids, we need to basically make sure that basically we are delivering low-cost raw material. Low-cost raw material, not at the expense of farmers. There's also an aspect that basically has to be taken into consideration. But at the same time, a raw material that basically industry can use, can rely on in terms of quality and quantity. So there are several areas on food, on plant protein that basically still need to be investigated. In particular, understanding how this plant protein can actually replace the functionality of animal protein, in particular in a milk and in a dairy and in a meat area. Assessing the cost associated with their production, and in particular on the concentration and extraction process, and also understand which are the functional performance, but also which are the potential performance that this protein can actually exert if have been properly functionalized. So, as I said, only if you take an holistic approach to addressing these challenges, you could actually make any impact. And we did, and we try to do so by having, tackling all the aspect area of the food chain, starting from primary production until to the dissemination and sustainability assessment. But I'm going to show very quickly through all the work packages sheet and show you basically what we did. As I said, I mean, I'm food microbiologist by training, but it's very interesting to see basically how different aspects of the food system can actually interact together, even from those that basically are not familiar with me. So, protein crop, soil and water management. Okay, so why starting from the soil? Well, actually, it's very important because if you want to make an impact, you need to make sure that this impact is relevant for all the players in the food system, not just for food industries. So what we did was, besides assessing different cultivars on chickpea, lentil, faba bean, and quinoa, that actually is growing well in Europe context, in particular also in Spain, we're also trying to investigate regenerative agriculture practices. And the idea is to basically, we are, for example, here are pictures of intercropping between barley and the French honeysuckle. And the idea here is to basically, the honeysuckles is a nitrogen fixator, naturally. So basically is also support barley in their growth, reducing the amount of fertilizers we need. And considering the fact that 90% of the fertilizer in Europe come from Russia, so it's not a bad option. Here again, intercropping between quinoa. So this is the quinoa plant here. And then you have honeysuckles here. And with the point here was to control the weed without using herbicides. So there is a good competition between quinoa and French honeysuckles, and then basically reduce the amount or the need to to herbicides. Again here, intercropping, here you can see barley and faba bean, barley and lentil. So in this way, we are actually able to diversifying the farmer business, and also reduce the cost associated with their production, and also at the same time increase the soil fertility, because besides assessing cultivars and agriculture practices, also we were focusing on machinery. Here you can see, for example, also the biodiversity, how it's improved. This is the pictures taken in February in Italy. This is a cover crop on mustards, and again here on buckwheat. So, and the fact is quite clear here also how you can preserve by the cover crop, preserve the soils by erosion, that basically normally happen during the winter season. So it's another aspect that basically has been taken into consideration in this project. And of course, as I mentioned, also the machinery innovation has been take part of this project, because besides assessing technology, assessing cultivars, we need to make sure the farmers has the right equipments for performing and developing this transition. So this is one of the subsoiler. A new machine has been implemented during the project that basically has the main point to keep the soil cover without breaking T2. So, and then we move from processing. So plant protein processing and side stream upcycling. So we produce our seed from the farm gate, and then we move to the food industry. So, and the idea here basically to implement a mild extraction process for the different protein sources that we're targeting. Here, for example, has been done on quinoa. And the idea is to extract the protein content and delivering most of the time protein concentrate. And protein isolates will be produced, but will be for a nutrition company that basically is focused on follow-up infant formula. So, and also here you can see just a couple examples, you know, how these are the commercial ingredients and the in vitro protein digestibility challenged against the BSA as the reference. And you see basically the soy protein isolate and the faba bean protein isolate has a very good high digestibility. But here also are the ingredients developed within the projects. And you see basically also that the faba bean isolates delivered from our partner Cicadina has a very good high digestibility compared to the control. And here you can see the digestibility is quite high, is quite low. It's because basically in this fraction we had a high concentration of visin and convisin. So basically also the extraction process has a huge impact in also in reducing the amount of allergens or anti-nutrients that basically normally you find in legumes. As I mentioned before, we were also working on microprotein. Here we can just show a couple of slides that show basically what we did so far. We started in selecting a high number of fungi strains, and then we develop a different medium combination between the flowers, legumes flowers, and the side stream from pasta and the brewery industry, and then we assess their production. So how their performance in terms of biomass productions. And then we do also the scale up, and then we are basically working on the main reactor at the moment. And basically we were able to deliver a fungal culture broth, and they're basically quite rich in nitrogen due to the fact that basically they can actually get the nitrogen from also from the air. And the good things about this is that also different fungi has different flavors. So, and we were able to isolate a fungi biome, a microprotein that basically has onion flavor. So that you can imagine, you know, which potential application could have, you know, in different food systems. In particular, this will be used in meat analogs production. So, but then I say besides the liquid state fermentation, we were also focusing on solid state fermentation with a company, Italian company called Mogu, and we were actually producing mycelium cake and with different raw materials. So this is a different way how to functionalize the raw materials, and we use the different type of fungi. And the good thing that you see that by fermenting the raw material with the fungi, and we had an amazing increase also in vitro protein digestibility. So let's the microbes do the work for us. So you get also an increase in the digestibility and also in quality of the protein itself. At the same time, you can see also that the fermentation with the fungi, you have a significant reduction in visin and convisin as well. So this is also another interesting and very cost-effective way how to functionalize raw materials. Food processing, definitely after we produce the isolates or the concentrate, we need to understand how they can actually play in a complex food system. And here just a few examples. We were all this data I'm presenting, for example, on the food processing has been published. So you will have a chance to see all of them on our website, smartprotein.ai. And here you can see basically also how through fermentation process, we are able to functionalize and enrich bakery products with faba bean. The faba bean protein has very structured functions. So actually has helping it doesn't compromise the gluten structure in the food system, in the bread system. It's actually also help us to increase the protein content, also having the claim on high protein source. And at the same time, we were also using strains able to produce specific antifungal compounds. So we were using multifunctional strains that basically allow us, besides not to make the faba bean proteins well included in the system, also with a longer shelf life without using preservatives. And then we were also working, for example, here on lentil protein isolates and other isolates has been produced in our project, and we were developing yogurt-like products. And you can see here we were challenging the soy protein, the lentil protein, and the cow's milk. And we were ending basically having the products that basically are the same consistency. And at the same time, we were using this specific lactic acid bacteria, in particular Leuconostox citrium, we were also able to produce antifungal compounds also in a yogurt base, but also mannitols, so basically sweeteners. So we were able to modulate in a very elegant way the flavor profile of the hand products, just using fermentation technology. Besides fermentation, there also enzyme technology has been applied thanks to our partner Novozymes. And you can see here, by adding in a specific enzymes, you can actually improve the viscosity, the water holding capacity, all the key aspects that basically are now influencing the quality of the hand product, in particular in yogurt. Of course, another big questions as well also on meat analogs and seafood. In this project, we're also targeting, as I mentioned, different seafood analogs, cheese analogs, and meat analogs as well. And here we are working with high moisture, low moisture extrusion with different ingredients. And different ingredients basically have been pre-treated specifically in order to outperform during extrusion. As I mentioned, also we're working on soft and hard cheese as well. But you see here, our starting point are not the isolates, or not only, actually are the flours. Actually, because it's a more, first of all, it's more sustainable considering the life cost assessing. And also we are retaining most of the micronutrients that normally you are losing when you're using isolates instead. Of course, so we produce the seeds, we process the seeds, we incorporate the lentilized, the protein ingredient in complex food system, but how healthy it is, how nutritious it is, because this is also a big question mark, when you are talking about meat lover, you say, oh, I don't know, it's just water and a little bit protein that basically is not digestible, not good for me. So the idea is to assess effectively how this protein source affecting our gut microbiome, and also how these proteins can actually support the muscles recovery after exercise. So we are doing a human intervention study that basically will help us to understand these big questions. Because we need to make sure, as I said, that basically the solution we are providing, the options we are providing are healthier, or at least not compromising the nutritional status or background of our food products. And in particular, when we are targeting also lifestyle consumers that basically are used to get the whey protein for building masses, also for recovering from exercise. So see basically how, in particular, in this case, lentil proteins can actually perform. Of course, as I mentioned, this is what we are working is innovation project. So making sure that we exploit any potential outcomes and assess any potential business development is also crucial. And on doing this, we are assessing the assessment of commercial feasibility of our technology. There is a specific partner focusing on that in assessing the application, the market size, composition, comparison of state of the art, which are the competitors, protection, profitability, and where get the money. So, and it is actually is a plus to have this specific expertise on the project, because most of the time, we're just scientists, we're doing for the love of it, and knowledge fine, we publish, that's it. But to make sure that basically there is also meaning in terms of an industrial perspective, and also number of employment you can have as a result of this knowledge, business development opportunity has to be taken along with IP protection that basically will be captured. Consumer studies, as I mentioned before, we need to make sure that basically what we are doing is what the citizen wants, what the consumer wants. And the idea, and you see on our website, we publish several market studies, have been quite expensive, but quite comprehensive as well. But we kept public so everybody can actually get access. We also running a second one. And but the most important thing is that basically we are also starting doing a consumer study in China. Why this? Well, the idea is to help our partners to develop products that basically fulfill Chinese market, because that could be a new frontier also to enlarge their business opportunity, not just in Europe, but also in China. So we have Chinese consumers also engaged in this project. Dissemination communication. Well, that's here there was yes, there was a video, but I think it's not working. Let's see. No, it's not working, but I can tell you the video. So as Cindy was mentioned before, the Smart Protein has been funded along with other 3 different projects, Susin Chain, ProFuture, NextPro. And what we did, we created a cluster of all the 4 projects. So basically targeting different protein sources. And the idea is to share experience, share insights, inputs that basically could support each other. And actually, this is one of the main aspects, say, wish that your commission wants. Now that basically we get contaminated to each other, to amplifying also our outcomes. As I say, dissemination is also very important. We are doing dissemination at a different level with targeting different audience, because that's what that need to be done. So we're targeting consumers, we're targeting food producers, farmers, and food industry, and so on. And we're doing this in 2 different ways. Through proper stakeholder advisory board. So the project has a proper stakeholder advisory board, as you see, coming from different sectors. We have the farmers, we have the investment, business development, research organization, food and beverage production, and retailers. And why we have this on board? For 2 different reasons. First of all, because we have a great opportunity to share the knowledge we are developing, the non-confidential one, with all those partners. So basically, we definitely disseminate. Our mission disseminate has been secure. But on the other side, we can get the feedback from them and see if what we are doing is still relevant for them. Because this project has been planned 5 years ago, and by the time you are ending, potentially is not always what you plan to do is still relevant for the industries. So having a link with the industry through the projects help us to, reshape, potentially our strategy, to make sure that basically what we are ending at the hand is still relevant, is still suitable, or able to address consumers, company needs. So. And our disseminator partner, ProVeg, is also every year organizing the New Food Conference, where actually we are taking part as a consortium, and we have a good a chance to exchange knowledge with them. But at the same time, also we are taking part of the Food for Climate Pavilion in a COP27 as a Smart Protein. So and over there we are gonna basically present a policy brief. So we develop a policy brief, a policy paper, along with other 3 projects, and we are going to present this to them. So this is also another way how we can translate the research into innovation and disseminate them. Sustainability assessment, I mean, I don't need to mention this to you, we need to make sure that basically what we are doing, it's on environmental point of view, it makes sense. As I mentioned before, when I show you the slides of environmental impact of products on the market, and you see, the alternative dairy products it has a similar environmental impact of milk, there is something wrong. So definitely here we are assessing we're doing the proper life cycle assessment, not on desk. So we actually sourcing data from the real environment to make sure that basically also company will have a plus, an added value when they are commercializing the products. So a couple of slides and then I'm done. Sorry for being so long, but I think there is so many things to say. And here, this is another slide coming from another nature food paper, and they show you basically that compared to our current diet, 100%, baseline environmental impact, if we are moving to vegan diet or novel food diet, we can definitely reduce, our impact in terms of land use, water use, and global warming. What does it mean? What mean that basically we should put an extra effort, because we know that in EU, there is the novel food regulation. So the time to market of some of the innovation that basically will be developed, is quite long. But the secret here is to make sure that basically the novel food dossier that will be delivered to EFSA will be properly compiled. And this is also very important. Yes. As I mentioned before, I don't know why it's like this, but anyway, I was talking about the food system so far, but I forget to talk, I didn't talk about the food environment. So the interface between consumers and food is also particularly relevant. I mean, as a scientist, when I deliver the products, it tastes good, smell good, it's not too expensive, I'm done. But actually, it's part of the game, because as Cindy was pointed out before, also the food environment is a huge impact and has a huge, let's say, potential in shaping our dietary transition. And of course, to shaping dietary transition, there is several inputs that basically influence citizens every day in their food choices. We have a personal food environment, like purchasing power, education, attitude, external food environment, so food accessibility, food availability, also the food scenting, and also what the company is providing. So, and I say a lot of work has to be done also in this area. And as Cindy was mentioned before, there are several calls that are being published and funded on this specific aspect. But here I want to share with you something that I thought will be relevant. We see that no transition will happen if there is no economic reason behind. So to make sure that also, I mean, the dietary transition is something that basically is relevant for our community, for our society. So the public procurement has to play a key role. And why not the public food procurement in Europe? You say we are basically feeding 76 million Euro kids in Europe every day, and 50% of their calories come from meal that basically receiving from the canteen. So why not using this financial power to shape our food system? How? Well, the idea is to, I want to go straight away with this, to develop a program, where basically there is 5 key aspects. Value workforce. So basically, the food procurement policy allow only suppliers that basically are in line with this principle. So basically, safe and healthy working condition for the suppliers, environmental sustainability. So basically, suppliers that basically are working, developing, producing organic products, local economy. So supporting all the local suppliers, and also nutrition, so promoting a generous portion of vegetable fruits. In this approach, you see basically there is equity, there is a push for thinking differently. But at the same time, when a company is building this system inside, it could be also a business card for approaching other partners, other clients. So in this way, you know, public procurement, in particular public food procurement, could actually in a way push the company to approach the food system in a different way, in a way that basically will be better for our planet and also for our future. So with this in mind, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. There are some questions here. Yeah.
What your experience be the most promising production activity to the highest total business level? At the moment, we are industrializing the faba bean and lentil protein extraction and concentration. This means also that there is economic meaning in doing that. From an agronomical perspective, this is another aspect. As I mentioned before, we need to make sure that the company can rely on supplier, on consistent production in terms of quantity and quality. And for example, we figure out, we never know before, that in Ireland, the faba bean production yield is four times higher than in South Europe. So, considering that we're also getting quite hot summer, strangely enough, in Ireland. So this climate change also, help, for example, northern countries to start investigating cultivars that basically were not thinkable anymore before. I'm thinking about for sorghum as well. Sorghum is African. It has an African origins, but they can easily grow now in Italy and also in the south of France. So we need to rethink strategically what could be grown according to the change we are facing at the moment. With the lentil, the only challenges we are facing now is the yield. The yield is still, there is still room for improvement, but the problem with the lentils that there is no much breeding work done on them. And when you're doing the breeding, you have to keep in mind that most of the time when you are stressing the yield, you are losing some other characteristics like drought resistance that basically could actually make a difference in a harsh condition like the one we experienced this summer. So there is potential. Also, chickpea works very well in Spain and Portugal. We have different field trials in Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, Italy, and Poland. Yes, and we saw that there is differences due to the climate conditions, but over 3 years projects, yes. But definitely the lentil, chickpea, and faba bean seems quite promising, also from agriculture perspective. Quinoa as well. Quinoa is very well adapted to also Spanish environment very well. Actually, I can say that basically also is growing now in Finland. In the South Finland, they are growing quinoa. So, but you see, there is a lot of innovation is also happening also in the primary productions, because I think we should not undermine the role that the primary production has, because everything starts from there.
Okay. More question? Alejandra, ¿hay alguna pregunta en online? No, it's okay.
It's too clear.
Hmm?
I was too clear.
Yeah. It's really complicated because, for example, I at this moment worry about, well, don't worry, this part is okay, about the amino acid profile. I understand, I'm from Argentina. I eat a lot of meat when I were young, and I understand this is a complete protein, no, eggs or milk or meat. And now maybe it's necessary to mix different materials to obtain or to complement some
Yes.
male
There is
calcium.
there is two strategies here. First of all, not using isolates. So we basically bring in the end products also co-passengers ingredients like minerals, and at the same time also mixing different protein sources, because that's also allow us to reach a proper amino acid balance. And keep in mind, the idea is not to deliver high protein products, because we don't need high protein products. We are not made to process high amount of proteins, because then we are overloading our kidney, and then we need to go on low protein diets because we cannot process protein anymore. So the idea is to, because that's also some mistakes regarding the protein halo, protein healthy. Protein is healthy, like fiber, like carbohydrates, depends basically how much you're having. So it's important to make sure that basically the products that we are developing is not unbalanced, considering the ratio compared to the other food constituents. So yeah. I try to point it out this because sometimes, and you see a young generation, and I'm excluding from the young generation, and they're always going to high protein diet, gluten-free diet, and they are taking these shakes, and most of the time you see that actually, do you know how many people, the percentage of European people affected by kidney deficiency? It's around 20%. There is 5 stages of kidney deficiency. And when you move to the 5th one, you go to dialysis. And if you keep overloading your kidney, that's what's happened. So but it's also important when you are communicating this to consumers. Protein is good, has other components. And we don't need to overload our body with excess amount of proteins, in particular with excess amount of digestible protein. So we are also working on non-digestible protein as a new fiber. So it's kind of a conflictive concept, because I hope you're not throwing me stuff in. But in particular in legumes, there are also a fraction of protein that basically are not digestible, but not because there are anti-nutrients, because the structure of the protein itself is like more or less like resistant starch. So, and that could be something that could be also worth to investigate further and to see could potentially application in the food system.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Continúo en español. Para terminar, es importante para nosotros identificar oportunidades para hacer colaboración o poder ser parte de, me cuesta un montón cambiar de idioma, de proyectos consorciados. Para esto hemos invitado a la consultora Iniciativas Innovadoras y en particular a Javier Bastarrica, que es su CEO y fundador, Es una de las consultoras de referencia para la identificación y gestión de proyectos consorciados a nivel europeo. Además, pues agradezco tanto a Javier como a Joseba, que ha sido en esta ocasión la entidad que nos ha dado apoyo para la organización de la jornada. Entonces, Javier, ¿te escuchamos? Sí.
Hola, buenos días. Muchas gracias, Cecilia. Bueno, vamos a hablar un poco brevemente sobre oportunidades de colaboración en proyectos del ámbito del agrario y agroalimentario, es decir, no nos vamos a centrar en proyectos de proteínas, sino de una forma mucho más amplia. Entonces, bueno, el primer programa, digamos que es el programa Horizonte Europa. En este momento no os podemos dar mucha información porque sí que hay varios borradores del programa de trabajo para el periodo 23-24, pero algunos de los que hemos visto lo hemos consultado con el Punto Nacional de Contacto y nos han aconsejado no difundirlo porque entienden que hay cambios. Entonces, pues simplemente, además, bueno, yo creo que a partir de la primera ponencia, pues ya nos han comentado que efectivamente el programa está en elaboración. Entonces no hemos querido bueno, pues difundir una información que presumiblemente no era correcta del todo, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, en principio el clúster, digamos que contiene más oportunidades para las empresas del sector agrario agroalimentario, es el clúster 6, aunque también nos han comentado en la primera presentación que en el clúster de salud pues también existen oportunidades, ¿no? En principio, se supone que las primeras convocatorias debieran salir a finales de año o principios del año que viene, del siguiente periodo. Están hablando de unos 2.000 millones para 300 proyectos. Y bueno, yo creo que a los que tenéis un poco de experiencia sabéis que hay 3 tipos de acciones, o sea, acciones de investigación puras, acciones más de innovación y transferencia, y acciones de coordinación que están más centradas en la creación de redes o en la difusión o en la transferencia de resultados. No voy a comentar más sobre el programa. Me voy a centrar en otros programas de cooperación que igual para algunos de vosotros son más desconocidos, son los programas de cooperación territorial, llamados más conocidos como Interreg, y dentro de estos, aquellos en los que puede participar Navarra o pueden participar entidades de Navarra, ¿no? Entonces, el primero de estos programas es el programa Interreg POCTEFA, es el programa de cooperación transfronteriza España, Francia, Andorra. Bueno, la primera convocatoria del periodo 21-27 presumiblemente se publicará en el primer trimestre del año que viene. Bueno, ahí veis un poco los territorios elegibles, que son por el lado español, pues estarían, digamos, bueno, pues estaría la Comunidad Autónoma de Euskadi, más Navarra, más La Rioja, más Zaragoza y Huesca en Aragón, más Lleida, Barcelona y Girona en Cataluña, ¿no? Y en el lado francés solamente son elegibles los territorios fronterizos, los departamentos fronterizos, no las regiones. A nivel del programa de cooperación territorial, Interreg forma parte de la política de cohesión, y para la política de cohesión la Unión Europea ha aprobado 5 objetivos políticos, ¿no? Entonces, el objetivo político 1, que tiene que ver con el tema de pues una Europa más inteligente. El objetivo político 2 es una Europa más verde. El objetivo político 3 sería una Europa más conectada, que tenía que ver con digitalización. El objetivo 4 es una Europa más social, la Agenda Social Europea. Y el objetivo 5 sería una Europa más cercana a la ciudadanía. Entonces, en ese marco es en el que tienen que moverse todos los programas, Aunque digamos que cada territorio tiene posibilidad de elaborar su programa, pero tiene que estar dentro de este marco de los 5 objetivos temáticos, que a su vez se declinan en una serie de prioridades y una serie de objetivos estratégicos. En el caso del programa Interreg POCTEFA, pues bueno, se han elegido. La prioridad 1 tiene que ver con el tema, con una Europa más inteligente. La prioridad 2, que tiene que ver con una Europa más verde. Y dentro de la prioridad 4, que es la Europa social, pues se ha elegido la parte de empleo y mercado de trabajo, la parte de la inclusión social y la parte del turismo y cultura, ¿no? Y luego también se ha elegido la prioridad 5, que tiene que ver con la vertebración del territorio. Luego hay una prioridad 6 que es específica de los programas de cooperación. Me centro un poquito en aquellas prioridades y objetivos en las que podríais, digamos, tener una participación las entidades, tanto públicas como privadas, relacionadas con el sector agro y agroalimentario, ¿no? Pues fundamentalmente estarían en la prioridad 1, que tiene que ver con la, digamos, con la creación de un espacio común de innovación y de transformación digital y el crecimiento sostenible, donde se han seleccionado 3 objetivos. El primero tiene que ver con desarrollar las capacidades de investigación y asimilar tecnologías avanzadas, normalmente orientadas a los sectores prioritarios del territorio, entre los cuales, lógicamente, está el sector agroalimentario. Fundamentalmente, este objetivo temático está orientado hay un documento interesante que podéis consultar, si os parece, en la web de Acción Exterior, donde han hecho una especie de cuaderno de bitácora de todos los programas europeos, y dentro de cada programa, bueno, pues digamos, podréis consultar más en detalle cuáles son los objetivos temáticos, y dentro de esos objetivos temáticos la tipología de acciones que se pueden desarrollar. Fundamentalmente, en este primer objetivo específico, estaría muy vinculado a los temas de creación de redes entre agentes del sistema de innovación y todo lo que sea desarrollar proyectos de transferencia hacia el entorno productivo. En el segundo, bueno, pues el segundo está más orientado a la aplicación de la digitalización, entonces tendría que ser proyectos que estuvieran orientados, pues, a la aplicación de tecnologías digitales en las empresas, bien sea desarrollar proyectos o aplicaciones que pudieran servir a un grupo determinado o subsector del sector agroalimentario, o bien, bueno, pues digamos, transferir o formar o aconsejar, o bueno. Y por último estaría el objetivo específico más relacionado con el crecimiento sostenible y la creación de nuevas empresas, ¿no? Que fundamentalmente serían más redes de apoyo a la creación de nuevas empresas o al crecimiento y demás, ¿no? Entonces, digamos que el tercero estaría más orientado a entidades intermedias o entidades de apoyo. Fundamentalmente los proyectos en este ámbito no son proyectos como los del programa Marco, es decir, de hecho el programa dice que efectivamente los proyectos que esperan no son grandes proyectos de investigación, sino que están esperando más bien proyectos de transferencia o de innovación bueno, de los cuales se puedan beneficiar empresas. Bueno, luego estaría el segundo de las prioridades, tiene que ver con los valores ecológicos del territorio, es decir, es la Europa más verde, donde se han seleccionado 2 objetivos específicos, que uno es el promover el acceso al agua y una gestión hídrica sostenible, donde cabrían proyectos que tuvieran que ver con un ahorro y reutilización del agua en los procesos de la industria agroalimentaria, bueno, y también en los procesos agrarios. Y luego, por el segundo de los objetivos, pues tiene que ver con el tema de la economía circular y el uso eficiente de los recursos, que veréis cuando vayamos viendo los demás programas, que muchos de estos se repiten prácticamente en todos los programas, ¿no? En este programa POCTEF cabe la participación de las empresas. Una cosa que no os he dicho y no está en la presentación es que el porcentaje de subvención o de cofinanciación es del 65% por parte de FEDER, y la participación de las empresas, bueno, normalmente en estos programas no son las empresas las que lideran los consorcios, sino que normalmente son, en este caso, si son proyectos de innovación o de transferencia, serán universidades o centros tecnológicos los que van a liderar los consorcios, o clústeres o otro tipo de agentes, pero sí que cabe la participación de empresas, normalmente en el desarrollo de pilotos o recibiendo, digamos, transferencia de conocimiento para su aplicación en su negocio. El otro programa que se va a abrir ahora en el mes de octubre, finales de octubre o primeros de noviembre, es el programa Interreg Sudoe, que veis ahí la zona de actuación, es el sudoeste de Francia, más la península ibérica, más las Islas Baleares. Bueno, este es un programa que está cofinanciado al 75%, y donde veréis que los ejes son bastante similares a los anteriores. Han cambiado el orden, es decir, para ellos la prioridad 1 es la que tiene que ver con la Europa más verde, y veis ahí que los objetivos específicos que han seleccionado son, por un lado, el del acceso y el uso de la gestión hídrica sostenible, y por otro han seleccionado otro objetivo que tiene que ver con la conservación de la naturaleza, la biodiversidad y las infraestructuras verdes, pero donde habla de reducir toda forma de contaminación pues de alguna manera deja abierta la puerta también a proyectos que tengan que ver con economía circular. Con lo cual, aunque no han seleccionado el objetivo temático, el objetivo específico de economía circular, sí que en este objetivo más global sí que cabe también proyectos de economía circular. Y luego el siguiente, bueno, pues en el de promover la cohesión social mediante la innovación y la transformación, es en el que, digamos, es la prioridad dirigida a la innovación o a la I+D, ¿no? Y aquí han seleccionado el objetivo específico 1, desarrollar y mejorar las capacidades de investigación, con lo cual la tipología de proyectos sería similares, es decir, proyectos de creación de redes, proyectos de transferencia de determinadas tecnologías, por ejemplo, al mercado. Es decir, si hubiera un proyecto a partir de resultados de un proyecto de europeo, o sea, de Horizonte Europa, por ejemplo, que se quiera transferir a un subsector dentro del ámbito agroalimentario, bueno, pues eso podría, de una tecnología determinada, pues o de extracción, o de una tecnología determinada de conservación, u otra serie de temas, pues yo creo que sería bien acogido. En el caso del programa SUDOE, en este periodo, uno de los retos del SUDOE tiene que ver con la crisis demográfica, bueno, la situación de las zonas rurales y demás, con lo cual todos los proyectos en el ámbito de la innovación tienen que estar muy orientados a transferir la innovación hacia el medio rural. Entonces, bueno, creo que el sector agroalimentario para eso está, de alguna manera, sería un sector prioritario para conseguir ese objetivo que se plantea el programa, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, y luego estaría el segundo objetivo, que tiene que ver con desarrollo de capacidades para la especialización inteligente, es decir, bueno, donde estarían también temas de bueno, pues nuevas tecnologías, desde temas de utilización de los datos hasta los temas que tienen que ver con impresión digital o con otra serie de tecnologías que en este momento, bueno, pueden aplicarse a cualquier sector de los prioritarios del SUDOE, entre los que está expresamente citado en el programa el sector agroalimentario. Y luego el tercero de los programas en el que puede participar Navarra o las entidades de Navarra, pues es el programa Interreg Área Atlántica. En este, bueno, pues ya veis ahí un poco el mapa, es decir, es toda la comunidad andaluza, más Portugal, más la cornisa cantábrica, incorporando Navarra y La Rioja, más todas las regiones atlánticas de Francia, más el conjunto de Irlanda. Entonces, ese sería el ámbito. Pues hay el porcentaje de cofinanciación también es el 75%. Bueno, en este programa antes estaba Reino Unido, que bueno, pues al dejar la Unión Europea, pues ya no participa, digamos, de los fondos de FEDER, pero sí que cabe la posibilidad de incorporar socios del Reino Unido, pero con su propio presupuesto. Entonces, bueno, pues las prioridades, bueno, una cosa que hay que decir del programa Atlantic Area, que está muy centrado en el mar. Es decir, que aquellos proyectos que tengan que ver, bueno, pues con la pesca o con tecnologías energéticas marinas o digamos que están, bueno, de hecho el programa SUDOE establece que ese tipo de programas no son elegibles en el SUDOE porque son elegibles en el espacio atlántico. Entonces, bueno, pues en todas las prioridades le han puesto el apellido azul en el programa, pero bueno, no solamente es el apellido, sino que efectivamente tendrán prioridad aquellos proyectos que tengan alguna vinculación con el ámbito del mar, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, ya veis que ahí los objetivos específicos seleccionados pues vienen a ser prácticamente los mismos, el de desarrollar capacidades de investigación y el de digitalización. Y en el ámbito green, digamos que está el tema de la eficiencia energética y la economía circular. Entonces, bueno, más o menos veis que en todos los programas se han recogido las prioridades, o sea, prácticamente las mismas prioridades y los objetivos específicos. Diferencias entre unos y otros. Bueno, el programa POCTEFA, España, Cooperación España-Francia-Andorra, es el que más presupuesto tiene y el que menos territorio, con lo cual la probabilidad de éxito de una propuesta, pues en principio es mayor. Es mayor. Entonces, bueno, pues eso sin duda es una ventaja. Los consorcios también en el programa POCTEFA pueden ser algo más pequeños. En el programa SUDOE o en el programa Espacio Atlántico, pues bueno, pues en el programa SUDOE, pues mínimamente un consorcio tiene que tener 4 o 5 socios españoles, 2 franceses y un portugués. Y en el programa en el programa Atlantic Area es exigencia del programa que haya un socio al menos de cada país participante. Es decir, tendríamos que tener por lo menos un socio español, uno portugués, uno francés y uno irlandés. Pero lo normal es que el consorcio sea algo más amplio y que hubiera socios de un par de regiones, o sea, de 2 o 3 regiones españolas, 2 o 3 regiones francesas, 1 o 2 socios irlandeses y al menos un socio portugués. Este es el poco. Y luego estaría el programa LIFE, que es el programa de medio ambiente de la Unión Europea, que también se ha reforzado en presupuesto de manera considerable para el periodo 21-27. En este momento tampoco tenemos el programa 23-24, con lo cual, bueno, pues os podemos hablar del programa anterior. Bueno, ahí hay los ámbitos, digamos, en los que se pueden presentar propuestas, serían naturaleza y biodiversidad, economía circular, mitigación y adaptación al cambio climático y transición a las energías limpias. Y dentro de estos, aquellas temáticas en las que vemos que cabe la participación de empresas agrarias o agroalimentarias serían el tema de economía circular y medio ambiente, el uso del agua otra vez, como antes, todo lo que tiene que ver con la transición energética, es decir, ahorro de energía, y todo lo que tiene que ver también con las comunidades energéticas sostenibles, pero en el ámbito, digamos, industrial. Bueno, en industrial o en el agrario, bueno, pues en la fotovoltaica, la agrovoltaica u otra serie de iniciativas, ¿no? Los programas, bueno, los proyectos la tipología de proyectos que hay en este programa, digamos que son por un lado los proyectos AP, que son los proyectos estándar, los habituales, es decir, que una entidad, bueno, en el LIFE cabe la posibilidad de hacer un proyecto que solamente con un único socio, una entidad que puede ser una empresa o un consorcio, digamos que puede presentar un proyecto para dar solución a una problemática ambiental. No son proyectos de I+D, son normalmente proyectos de aplicación, proyectos piloto, proyectos de transferencia a partir de un conocimiento determinado, por ejemplo, un desarrollo que se haya hecho a escala laboratorio, poder hacer una planta piloto donde se ensaye ya a una escala industrial. Eso podría ser un proyecto, digamos, eso sería un proyecto estándar. En la financiación es del 60% de ayuda. Normalmente son proyectos entre 3 y 5 años y entre 700.000 y 6 millones de euros por proyecto. Esos son los proyectos, digamos, habituales o ordinarios. Luego están los proyectos estratégicos. Bueno, pues estos ya tienen que ver más con o bien un desarrollo, digamos, un proyecto integral en un territorio, o bien un desarrollo, un proyecto integral en una cadena de valor. Entonces ya son proyectos más grandes, con una duración entre 6 y 10 años y con un presupuesto entre 10 y 20 millones. Y luego en el ámbito de la transición a las energías limpias, bueno, digamos que los proyectos, digamos, desde el punto de vista de financiación digamos que se parecen más a los proyectos de Horizonte Europa, es decir, el porcentaje de financiación es del 95%, no incluyen infraestructuras, así como en los proyectos estándar y en los proyectos integrados caben, pues eso, desarrollo de infraestructuras o de inversiones. En estos proyectos no caben infraestructuras, con lo cual lo normal es que son más proyectos, bueno, pues de transferencia de conocimiento, de mejora de las condiciones para que se desarrolle una determinada materia. Entonces, bueno, esta es un poco la tipología de proyectos que se supone que, bueno, que en breve tendremos el borrador de programa para los próximos años, y las primeras convocatorias habitualmente suele ser alrededor del mes de mayo cuando se publica, digamos, se publicaría la convocatoria para el año 2023. Y esto es un poco todo. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Ahí está Javier. Está bien, o sea, ya nos iréis avisando cuando sí, vayamos teniendo más información. Ahí está. Pues con esto vamos a dar por cerrada la jornada. Os agradecemos a todos los que estáis en presencial y a los que estáis en online. En particular también quería agradecer a Ruth, nuestra traductora, que hace un trabajo, claro, de ir pasando la parte técnica y casi no le dejamos tiempo de descansar entre una y la otra, y al equipo NagriFood también, ¿vale? Así que muchas gracias y bueno, ahora seguimos los que estamos aquí, ¿vale? Muchas gracias.